Hi, my name is Rachel Craigie. I'm the host for the Nuts and Bolts of Adding a Legal Second Suite. In this part of a five-part series, we're going to hear from Ken Bekendam. He is a real estate investor, developer, and contractor, and he is the owner of King's Home Incorporated and LegalSecondSuites.com. In this series, you're going to hear from Ken. He's going to go through the Ontario Building Code on a very high level and all the things that you need to be aware of if you're going to be adding an additional legal suite. So enjoy. And if you have any questions afterwards, please feel free to reach out and we'll be happy to get back to you. Take care. Bye for now.
Okay, Ontario code. So zoning is one thing, building code is another thing. Just because a property could be zoned to allow for the additional units, you still have to comply with minimum building code requirements. And if you can't comply, you won't be able to get a building permit. If you can't get a building permit, you can't create your apartment legally. And so everything under the building code is achievable through renovations. It's just whether or not it's going to be simple or extensive. So this is where we kind of need to know some of our basics so that we know how much construction work is going to be required. The biggest one being ceiling heights. This is the number one thing that we check when we're looking at a new space is what are our minimum heights? What's the minimum height requirement? So I'm just going to talk about properties that are older than 5 years, because for the vast majority of, the vast majority of us are probably buying houses that are older than 5 years, where we're going to be converting and renovating. So, so under the Ontario Building Code, we have to be minimum ceiling height of basically 80 inches, okay? 80 inches for at least 50% of your ceiling area. So in your basement, you got to be 80 inches finished. The bulkhead, so where the ducts are or the beam, the bulkhead can be 77 inches finished, okay? Those are two key heights. So that's across the province. The caveat being Hamilton in particular is actually following national code for minimum height. So in Hamilton, we're actually allowed lower ceiling heights in Hamilton. So Hamilton, they're accepting actually 77 inches for the main height. So rather than 80 inches, they're accepting 77 for the main height. And then they're accepting 73 inches under a bulkhead in Hamilton rather than 77. So they're allowing a couple inches shorter, which is great because a lot of these older homes, especially the older like century homes downtown, they have lower basement heights. And so that's been really, really beneficial to getting projects approved in Hamilton. I'm trying to push other municipalities to follow the national code for these, but I'm only one person and I'm trying to fight the province. So that doesn't go so well. So that's a key height, okay, guys? So let's say you can't meet your minimum height. Well, there's options. Oftentimes like a beam, a structural beam might be too low. And so we can get into structural work where we can create a recessed flush beam. We raise the beam up into the floor joist and we refasten the joist with joist hangers and then basically get that beam out of the way, especially in our path of egress. Which is the path of egress is really the pathway from the bedroom where you would walk from a bedroom down the hallway and up the stairs. That's your path of egress. And that's where you need your clear minimum height. So here's just some pictures of us putting in a beam. Okay, the other thing I want to touch on is egress. Okay, so obviously ceiling height's important. Egress into our units is equally as important. Means of egress. So that's how you enter the unit. Basically two different ways of entering the unit. It's either you have a separate dedicated entrance into the unit, completely separated from any other unit, or you have a shared entrance, which is you come in a door which is shared with other units, and then you enter your unit from there. So so for us, if we're going to do a simple like basement apartment, okay, I'm just going to use a typical bungalow as an example. We have a kind of a side entry door or maybe a rear entry door. And then we can come in that door, kind of right down the stairs into the basement. We seal off or drywall off, any sort of stairs that might lead to the main floor. We completely separate it. So that would meet the code requirement. And then if in this picture there, you see that our side entry door is at a higher elevation than the basement. So that means that we would need an egress window down on that lower level. So basically you have to have an egress window. Now, the egress window can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be in a bedroom. It really can be anywhere within the unit. It could be in the living room, obviously it could be in a bedroom as well. Logically, when we're designing these units out, we're trying to put the egress window opposite of where our exit door is. Just logically, if there's a fire, you kind of want to run to an opposite direction. A lot of times we have to make, I won't get there quite yet. Okay, so shared egress. So I kind of touched on it a little bit. So we come in a shared entryway, then we go down the steps or up the steps, and then we approach the entry door to get into the other unit. So in a house that only has 2 units, even if we have a shared entryway, an egress window still satisfies the requirement for a secondary exit, okay? If we have a building that has 3 or more units, so these triplexes, these fourplexes, if we have a shared entry system, we need an actual separate exit door, okay? That leads out, not a window, it's gotta be a door. And this applies to the triplexes and upwards. And this is where sometimes it can get very challenging getting those separate exit doors, especially if you have like a 2-story or a 3-story building. And you're doing your second and third units up on the upper levels, and you may have a shared entry system. This is where you might need fire escapes, like a rear fire escape or something out the back of the building. But for houses with only 2 units, the egress window satisfies the separate exit, okay? So egress window. So real quick, egress window, we need an opening that's 3.8 square feet in dimension, okay? In total opening area has to be 3.8 square feet, and with no dimension less than 15. So if you have a slider type of window, you have to be able to slide it all the way open, and that opening has to be 3.8 square feet, okay? Oftentimes we don't like to use slider type windows for egress windows because you only get the benefit of half the window opening. Typically we'll go to like a door swing style window where you can open up the entire size of the window. A lot of times when we're doing windows in basements, for basement apartments, we have to make a window bigger, maybe for natural lighting, for a lighting requirement. And so oftentimes, we'll make a window bigger to meet both the lighting requirement, but then also to satisfy the egress window requirements. You can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So, there are minimum room sizes. Okay, so when we're trying to look at a space, figuring out can we actually do a legal unit, there are minimum sizes under the building code. For living rooms and dining rooms. I don't want to get into the specifics of each and every one, but you just have to recognize that there are minimum sizes for these things. And there's, a minimum amount of light that's also required for these spaces as well. Did you know that a tiny home, like the smallest legally, can be 188 square feet? So the smallest dwelling unit that we can create is 188 square feet. That's tiny. It's not that big. It's a bachelor unit. So a lot of these garage conversions we're doing in existing garages, they're tiny, they're small spaces. But because under the building code, it doesn't have to be that big. We have minimum door sizes, like, a service room door has to be minimum 32 inches. So your furnace room door by code should be 32 inches minimum. Bedrooms by code have to be 30 inches. A bathroom can be as small as 24 inches. And those are the primary ones. An entry door to a dwelling unit 2, minimum by code is 32 inches. Okay. Minimum height is 78 inches for a door. Obviously we have to have minimum plumbing requirements, okay? So every dwelling unit has to have a bathroom. I think we know that, right? Toilet, vanity, a place to shower. Every unit has to have hot water supply, so a hot water tank, okay? Every unit has to have laundry. So when it comes to laundry, either it can be within the dwelling unit itself or has to be in a common area, like a common laundry, accessible to the other dwelling units in its own separate fire rated space within the building. You cannot remove or not have laundry within your dwelling, within the dwelling unit or in a common area. You have to provide laundry some way, okay? We have minimum lighting requirements, okay? So living rooms, dining rooms, which are our bigger spaces, require 5% natural light. This is, again, for houses older than 5 years, okay? We can have 5% natural light. So that's 5% of the floor area. So you measure your floor area, times it by 5%. That tells you the minimum amount of glass area you need, okay, for the window. Bedrooms are 2.5%, so smaller. We can actually get away with quite small bedroom windows in these existing houses. But the minimum there is 2.5%. Kitchens, bathrooms, laundry rooms don't require a window, okay? Rachel, how much time do I have?
How much more time do you need?
I could go all day on this stuff.
How about we'll give it maybe like 10 more minutes?
Okay, so let's talk about fire separation. So obviously fire separation is obviously very important for the safety of the unit. So in an existing house or existing building, okay, we're permitted a 30-minute fire separation, okay, 30-minute fire separation between units, okay? In a house, so a house is defined as up to 2 units, we are permitted a further reduction to a 15-minute fire separation if we have interconnected smoke detectors. But just keep in mind that a 15-minute fire separation is acceptable for the fire rating. However, there is another requirement for the sound rating called STC 50, which is a sound rating. And unfortunately, we can't meet a 15-minute fire separation, which a 15-minute fire separation, for those who don't know, is like half-inch regular drywall, okay? That's 15 minutes. Whereas 1 layer type X 5/8 drywall is a 30-minute separation, okay? So there's no assemblies in the building code that allows a 15-minute, so a half-inch regular drywall that also meets the STC 50 rating, okay? So we actually never ever use the 15-minute separation. It's always minimum 30 minutes. So when it comes to the service room, so your furnace room, so there's 2 ways of approaching the service room. So in a house, again, defined up to 2 units, the service room itself doesn't need fire separation, but you still have to provide fire separation between units. So if you have an existing furnace room that has a lot of, pipes and penetrations, a lot of valves and a lot of stuff in there, and, you're trying to add a unit with the existing service room, rather than drywalling the ceiling assembly to create a separation from the unit above us, we fire separate the walls and the door. And that allows us to leave that ceiling unfinished, but still provide our continuous fire separation. So that's just a little tip on that, okay? So here are 2 assemblies, okay? So our typical ceiling assembly is 2 layers of safe and sound insulation, resilient metal channel, and then 1 layer 5/8 type X drywall. That's for the ceiling. That's our minimum code requirement, okay? That gets us to be a 30-minute fire separation. The wall assembly, so this would be a shared wall. So anything that's separating 2 units, maybe it's this wall that you built at the top of staircase to separate, a main floor apartment from the basement. Maybe it's a front foyer hallway that you fire.
I think we're losing you a bit, or it's me. Ken? I think we lost you.
So this is a assembly. So minimum code is, we call it a W4A wall assembly, but it's basically one layer of drywall, stud. Might not hear me?
Hello, Ken? Hi.
Yeah, I think I went unstable there. I live in the country, guys, on a farm, so my internet's not great.
The
Okay.
alpacas have got the wiring.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, typical wall assembly. We have one layer drywall on one side, safe and sound in the stud, and then we have resilient channel, and then 2 layers of drywall on the other side. Okay, so that's the key difference there is our walls. We have double 5/8 drywall on them, whereas the ceilings only have single layer. Okay. Okay, just a little side note for fire separation, your bathroom fan, stove vent, dryer vents, anything that goes into the joist cavity. So if you're gonna run your venting through the joist cavity and out the header, that joist cavity needs to be fire rated with 5/8 drywall. So you line the joist cavity with 5/8 drywall, and then you caulk the joint with fire caulking, and that basically fire rates that sound cavity, or it's that joist cavity. Okay, moving on, because I don't have a lot of time and there's so much to cover. Soundproofing, okay? So soundproofing, this is key, guys. Like our number one complaint we get with multi-unit is soundproofing, sound complaints, noise complaints. And if you just do the bare minimum, building code assemblies, like that ceiling and wall assembly I just showed you, you're still gonna have a lot of noise coming through that. Just because like minimum code is not enough when it comes to noise. So you have to be installing additional products into your construction to help mitigate noise. There's green glue, there's rubberized underlayments. We're using a lot of Sonopan these days. Sonopan is like an acoustical board that you can install on the ceiling and the walls to help basically absorb sound. Really, really important, guys. I can't stress that enough. I've seen a lot of, landlord-tenant relationships go bad because of noise. Real quick, smoke detectors. We need one inside the bedroom, a smoke and strobe, and then we need a smoke strobe and CO outside the bedroom in the hallway. Okay. Induct smoke detector. If you have a shared furnace, so you have an existing furnace, you're going to keep it, share for both units. You have to have an induct smoke detector, and this basically just it sucks in smoke in the furnace. So when smoke gets sucked in by the furnace, it will detect it and shut the furnace off, so it doesn't circulate the smoke around the building. So this is a code requirement. Last but not least, okay, guys, NIMBYism. Okay, just because all of us here love secondary dwelling units and additional units and coach houses, that doesn't mean that all your neighbors love it. Okay, and I've been up against a lot of NIMBYism with their applications. There's a lot of misinformation out there about these units. There's a lot of education we have to do to the public about why these are great and amazing units. I've been personally dragged through the mud, in the media. I'm just going to skip through this. Here's a petition with like 150 neighbors opposing a garage conversion I did in Hamilton. Okay, so just so you guys are aware, kind of what we're up against. And this is why the province has come out with Bill 23. This is why they're trying to reduce the amount of minor variances that are required for these units. They're trying to reduce the amount of public consultation. Don't get me wrong, public consultation is great. We live in a democracy, but by having, common sense as of right zoning, it removes the amount of minor variances we get or we need. And my application, got denied by Committee of Adjustment. We had to appeal it to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Basically what should have been an easy planning decision became very political. And long story short, I did finally get it approved.
And how long did that take?
So basically, so on this particular application, we were in this limbo period between when we made our application under an old bylaw in Hamilton here that still required parking spaces. So we needed a minor variance for, basically we needed a minor variance for one parking space for a little garage at the back of this bungalow, existing garage or solid garage, full of junk, right? Typical garage. And so when we made the application, we required parking. We couldn't fit 3 parking spaces on this property. We could only fit 2. So we had to apply to committee. 150 neighbors came out and opposed it. Committee of Adjustment denied it. We appealed it. But then 83 days later, Planning Committee in Hamilton changed the parking bylaw. They removed all of the parking requirements in the city. Which was an amazing thing. So we ended up going back, reapplying for our garage, and it got approved because now we could comply. And so basically, because the city came out with the common sense as of right zoning bylaw, we avoided, we didn't avoid it in this application, but we're avoiding it now and going into the future. All of these 150 neighbors, being NIMBY about it. And so long story short, it was in the paper. We got our approvals and permits, and it was an amazing thing.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's pretty much my presentation, guys. I don't want to take up all the time. Look, get your legal surveys, okay? I learned the hard way. Legal surveys save the day. Any arguments with neighbors, it's solved by a legal survey. So go get one. Soundproofing, don't be cheap about soundproofing. Put in Sonopan, okay? And finally, triple check your ceiling heights because these are super crucial and can be very expensive to fix, okay? Bench footing, underpinnings, it can be fixed, but it can be expensive. Okay, yeah, guys, there's my contact info.